Hello everyone, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Thank you for joining me in my little corner of the internet where I talk all things planners, fountain pens, and fountain pen inks. And yes, today it is time to go through my favorite inks for spring. And I like to do this every year because I think it does change. My tastes change. So this is a great way to see what I'm preferring year on year. But also it's a great way for me to use my inks just to be able to splash them on the page. So I'm here in my Hobonichi A5 notebook with 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. I'm going to be writing with my Kakimori stainless steel nib, but I'll also be using some pipettes as well as the sandwich bag to create the lovely designs of all the inks that I've chosen for this season. All right, the first ink I'll be swatching will be Andurilium Spirula Green. And I decided on this because I did not have enough greens in this mixture. And this one feels a lot more like the darker green of those buds that you first see. So let me do a small string of ink here on my pipette. And gosh, I've put my jar of water on the wrong side of the table. So let's remedy that right now before I spill anything. And then we take my sandwich bag, make sure it's all nice and wrinkled, and then just dab. And then you want to lift it up as well so that you can add some more to it as well. And then I'm going to just wipe it off on my towel right next to me. And then we'll write the name of the ink. Oop. Very organized here. So this is Andurilium Spirula or Spirula Green. It's a lovely, bright, springy, also summery green. The next ink I have is Diamine Amazing Amethyst. And I think purple is such a wonderful spring color. And I have so many purples. It was hard for me to decide which purple or how many purples I should include in this. But I thought, you know what? Just have fun choosing your inks and going through your inks and see what happens. So loving that. I got that from it was through a Secret Santa a couple of years ago, and I'm so glad that I did get that because it's such a gorgeous purple. Look at that. This particular ink has lovely shades of the purple, but there's also pinky purple in there, which I think is just stunning. So this is Diamine Amazing Amethyst. Who knew that I would like purples as much as I do? Gorgeous. I'm 2 inks in and I already have stains on me. That's okay. Next we have Diamine Celadon Cat. I thought a lovely blue or a lighter blue would be great. Now it's not necessarily representative of like the spring sky because the spring sky is kind of gray and rainy. But I don't know, when I think of spring, I think of pastels and I think of florals. I said this last week, like florals, groundbreaking. But it's just, I love the pastels of spring. And this one is such a beautiful shading ink as well. If you're not familiar with this ink, this was a Reddit ink from a couple of years ago where I guess a group on Reddit vote on a couple of inks that Diamine then produces, which is such a great way to involve the community. So this is Diamine. I think that says Celadon. Cat. Gorgeous. And it just shades beautifully. Next, I have Diamine Meadow. This has been in my collection for years, this ink, because it's such a great, I say starter green, but if you're going for any green in your collection, this one is a great one to start with because it's beautiful. It shades wonderfully, but also behaves really well in a pen. And I just think it's also wonderful for spring with all of the leaves. Gorgeous. Does that one look like a dinosaur? I always find it funny in the comments where people are like, that one looks like a dinosaur. That one looked like this. It's like that Rorschach psychological test with the splatters. I feel like this is definitely a nod to that. So we have Diamine Meadow. It's just a beautiful grassy green, hence the name Meadow. The next ink I have is from Ferris Wheel Press, and it is Buttered Popcorn. Unfortunately, this one isn't really available anywhere, but I do have a video where I tried to find dupes for this, so go ahead and check that video out. But I appreciate the comment that some of you left in one of my videos saying that I shouldn't feel like I can't use my inks if they're no longer available. You know, I shouldn't hoard them, and I don't, but I shouldn't also keep myself from using them in a video or anything like that, because it's a way to share what I have. But I also feel like these videos are a way for me to memory keep my collection. What I like about this particular color, other than the fact that it does look like the butter that you put on popcorn, is that it really is that bright. It reminds me of like the sunlight finally coming out in spring. Although saying that, I mean, winters in Alberta, they're cold, but it's sunny. At least we have that going for us. But I love this color because it's just bright and punchy, and it feels like, or it reminds me of basically like baby chicks. Do you know what I mean? That baby chicks are like the sign of Easter or the sign of spring. That's what this color reminds me of. So that is Ferris Wheel Press Buttered Popcorn. Next, I have Herbin Rouille d'Encre, and I had this inked up last month actually in my Aurora 88, and it was one of the first, if not the first, dusty pink that I absolutely love. And I'm noticing actually how much I'm loving doing these sandwich bag swatches, because what an easy way to get some art on or in your ink journal. While I love my Browse ornament nib and will still continue to use that, I love using this to be able to show off the shading properties of the ink. It's just so much easier doing it with the sandwich bag, and it's such a, I say, cheaper alternative to the more bougie ink swatching instruments. So this is Herbin Rouille d'Encre, or rusty inker. My daughter's gonna have a go at me for butchering that. The next one is a company that I'm not too sure of. I think it's part of Herbin, but I'm not sure. It's L'Écritoire Prune, or Encre Prune. And this one was given to me or sent to me by a pen friend when they were off visiting Paris. And I just love it because of the beautiful shades of purple, pink, magenta. Just gorgeous. Sorry, the sounds of my pipette here. Like, isn't that stunning? And then lift it up. Yes. I love it when I get like the mix of how that goes down. It, just the different patterns in the ink. Love it. So this one is, and I'm going to make sure that I write the name down properly because I don't want to get that wrong. So I think this is Encre, L'Écritoire Prune. Gorgeous, just the pink, magenta, purple. Lovely. Now we have Le Bon Aphrodite Pink, another dusty pink that I absolutely fell in love with. And I actually think it's quite fitting that it's going to go right underneath Rouille d'Encre, so you can actually see the comparison between the two and look at how similar or not they actually are. I feel like I'm running out of space here. Yeah, it's a dusty pink, but this one I feel like is more coral, there's more orange happening in. Let's make sure that there we go. Oh, look, I'm getting it everywhere. So this is, and actually the Laban inks are lovely. They don't have a huge line, but oh, I'm getting ink everywhere. This is Laban, Aphrodite. Aphrodite. I love that their inks are named after Greek gods or goddesses. I had a whole, when I was in the 6th grade, learned about Greek mythology for the first time back then. But then when I was in university, I took a few classics courses and loved it so, so much. But look at the way that that shades, and you can definitely see how different it looks from Roi d'Ancre. Roi d'Ancre is a much softer pink, whereas this one is definitely more saturated. So that is Laban Aphrodite. The next ink I have is Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku Rin, and I currently have this inked in my Pilot Kakuno, but I also wanted to show you how similar this looks to Diamine Meadow if you ever had to choose between the two. It's lovely. And I mean, they do look a bit similar, and I'll zoom out and show you the differences between the two. Let's go ahead and do my splatter, adding some on the edge there. Beautiful. Now that I am swatching it, it does look lighter than Meadow. Definitely similar. So Chiku Rin, and it's definitely not too light. I have it in an extra fine nib for Pilot, and it still writes beautifully and very legibly. So that it's Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku Rin. Next, we have another beautiful purple. This is Tono and Limbs number 11, the boundary between like and dislike. And I really do have to admit that basically the main reason that I wanted to try this ink was because of the name. Yeah, I know. And also, like, how does one get the name for, you know, boundary between like and dislike and associated with this particular color? You know, what is it that makes you think this is the boundary between like and dislike? Oh, and I got my hair down there. There we go. But it's a beautiful light purple that just shades so beautifully. And I don't know if I'll even have room for the whole name. So Tono and Limbs number 11, boundary. If I can even write, between like and dislike. Okay, made it fit, but it's just going to shade beautifully, and I'll definitely show you once these are all dry. The next ink, I actually had to choose between the three in this category or from this brand. It's Van Diemen's Overcast, and the reason that I chose Overcast is because I feel like some days of spring, it's just rainy and overcast and not very pretty. And actually, I'm saying that, and this is supposed to be the inks of spring, but it's snowing where I live right now. And I said this in my spring pens video. Spring is basically just the fight between, where's my sandwich bag? The fight between winter and summer. So some days are beautiful and other days are like, what the heck? This one, it feels very light when you first swatch it, but it then just shades so, so beautifully. Ooh, that is my chair squeaking. So this is Van Diemen's Overcast, and I just think it's such a good representation of like the different color of the sky when it is, well, I say a different representation, but it's a way to fantasize about the sky if it wasn't so gray, and it's just these beautiful pinks and blues and purples. Last and certainly not least, we have Wearingle White Rabbit. And you're probably wondering why I would choose this, but this has such a beautiful, oh, if I can open the bottle, just a soft, lovely pastel peachy pink, but also there's a rabbit on the front of it, and rabbit just is Easter, spring, you know. And I've actually really come to love this ink. I didn't used to because I thought it used to write way too light, but I seem to be in my era of very fine nibs, but also lighter ink in those fine nibs, which is funny. Okay. It's funny how your tastes change over time. So we have Wearing Gold, White, Rabbit. Lovely. I'm going to wait for all of these to dry, and then I'm going to show you all of the shading because these are just such gorgeous inks for spring. So the inks have had a chance to dry, and we can really take a look at the shading properties of these beautiful spring inks. So Andrellium Spirula Green, it really feels like, oh, how do I say it? Like, is it more of a Kelly green? I think it's more of a Kelly green, and it's lovely, and it writes beautifully. And I think that's really the important thing, not just to see the shading or everything like that, but to be able to see what it looks like when you're writing with it. And then we have Amazing Amethyst. I really need to use this next month because it's one of my favorite purples from, well, ever. And it just has so much depth to it. Like the shading in this is gorgeous. It goes from really light to almost shades of pink to the really saturated areas. So Diamine Amazing Amethyst, if you haven't tried it yet, I highly, highly recommend that you do. Then Diamine Celadon Cat. I haven't chosen too many blues because I don't actually own a ton of blue inks, but I really love the sky gray blue of Diamine Celadon Cat. I know some people find it a little dry, but I haven't actually come across that. I think it's actually quite a well-behaved ink. And then we have Diamine Meadow, another beautiful spring or even summery green. Reminds me of grass, which is definitely why it's called Diamine Meadow, because it really just evokes spring. Now we have Ferris Wheel Pressed Buttered Popcorn. This is such a lovely, sunshiny, punchy yellow that I feel like is just emanating spring. And then we have Herbon Rouge d'Encre. Love how it shades, but it's also such a lovely, soft pink. And I'm going to compare it immediately to Le Bon Aphrodite. Same kind of dusty pink, but definitely more saturated and a little bit darker. So if you were ever wanting to compare Herbon Rouge d'Encre versus Le Bon Aphrodite, here you go. And then we have Encre L'Écritoire Prune, a lovely, beautiful purple. And I'm going to just briefly show Amazing Amethyst and then compare it to L'Écritoire Prune. And you can see the differences. I feel like this is warmer, whereas Amazing Amethyst is definitely a bit more cooler toned, but still really beautiful. And then we have Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku Rin. I'm going to show this close up. And then I'm going to show Diamine Meadow close up. And they do look very similar. But when we look at Pilot Iroshizuku Chikurin, it is a little bit lighter and a little bit wetter of an ink. And those are also important distinctions when you want to choose an ink. The color may be similar, but other properties such as how wet it is can definitely affect whether or not you want to purchase a specific ink. Then we have Tono and Limbs number 11, Boundary Between Like and Dislike. It's a lovely softer purple, and it's just, I love the softness of it, but also I feel like the name Boundary Between Like and Dislike is kind of describing spring right now in Edmonton. It's that boundary between winter and summer, and that's what spring basically is. And then we have Van Diemen's Overcast. The name itself suggests that it's a rainy, overcast day, but then the colors are just so bright and vibrant for spring. And then last but not least, we have Wearing Gold White Rabbit. For me, the rabbit, Easter, spring. But I love the soft beige in this, but then you have the shading of like the brown and pinks in there. Just excellent. Excellent. So there are my spring inks for 2026. And I like doing this every year because I do like to see how it compares to my previous year. And I'll leave the video for that in the corner up here. But it's interesting how my taste either stays very much the same or changes based on the inks that I've acquired throughout the year. But I do love the spring inks. I really love this color palette. It's not too punch you in the face type of bright, but still there's something calming about all of these colors while still being really fun. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Otherwise, thank you again and have yourselves a great day.